Hello, everybody. I am super excited to be here today. One, because if you've been following my podcast for a while, you know that I've taken a little bit of a break. And so I'm excited to come back in and start giving all of you such valuable information, joy, and all the things you need to follow your own path, follow your true right path for you, for your business, and bring a lot more joy and a lot more fun into your life. So I today am here with Sharon Marie Scott. She is an amazing healer. A lot of things I want to let her tell you, because I think we each know ourselves better than anybody else does. So I'd love to have Sharon. Would you tell us about you and what you do?
Yeah, it's interesting that you passed the baton to me because I'm in sort of a transition of changing the language around what I do and what I offer and how I serve. And if you had, well, we've done an interview in the past, and I would label myself as a multidimensional healer, and of course, those skills and gifts are still online and part of the journey that I'm able to take people on. But I've had, like so many, I'm sure you know, in these communities, I've had a really big shift, especially in the last 6 months, and particularly the last 3 months, including like a health crisis. Like everything about my life was turned upside down. My health, my main living situation, my major relationship. But so nowadays I am realizing I've stepped into these new gifts, and I'm an accelerator. So people that are looking to continue their, let's say, their energetic expansion, and maybe they hit a plateau in their careers or their health or their relationships, and that's when I can step in and help them like kick over the side and get that leveling up that they're looking for energetically. And then their whole world shifts. Like as they make the internal shift, the external world completely shifts to match that new, like higher vibration. So I'm calling myself an accelerator. And I certainly love to also talk about my leadership and education in the alternative lifestyles communities, which for me means sex positive, LGBTQ, kink and BDSM, and polyamory, open relating or sovereign relating. And I love combining those two communities, like my spiritual community and the alternative lifestyles community. And because I believe that being in a relationship is to be also on a spiritual journey. So those are kind of like the major points that I like to touch on as people are interested in getting in touch with me.
Beautiful. Now, we're going to dive into trusting in transition. You talked about how you've been going through this transition. You've had all kinds of things turn upside down. And, it's an interesting thing that I'm not positive exactly what the reference is, but I've heard that if you go through 3 major life changes, like loss of a major relationship, a big move, or what is the other one?
I've heard other ones like the ACE report, like having a baby, getting married, right. Moving.
Yeah. Death in the family, things like that. But if you go through 3 of them in the span of a year, that it will, if you get tested in certain domains, that you will actually test and show up as schizophrenic.
Wow.
Because the stress of it is so overwhelming. Because if you're changing a major relationship, you're changing the way you're relating to everything. If you're going through a major move, you're changing your home base, your place of safety.
Sure.
If you lose somebody that's, instrumental in your support system, again, it changes where do you go for that thing. And so the stress of it all, because really underneath it, it's rocking your safety, your sense of safety. So when you have 3 of those big things that happen, it rocks your sense of safety and can make you feel like you're all over the place, which could potentially, in some circles, some diagnoses, potentially have you show up as schizophrenic. So you're going through a few of those things, yet you feel so grounded, so even, so calm. And I think that really lends to our trusting in transition theme. But before we dive into that, I want to hear why it is you do what you do.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on really quickly the schizophrenia
Yeah.
because my grandmother was diagnosed as schizophrenic, and she was a twin, which adds another interesting element to that. But so, when you ask me about the why, I feel like that's related to it too. It's like, I believe in being the change maker in my lineage, in my current, my nuclear family. And so the why goes back to having such a challenged childhood. I have trauma in my background of emotional abuse and neglect and sexual childhood abuse and incest. And to come from a background where you are seen as invisible, where you're not allowed to have feelings other than joy or make it look like you're having a happy life, and to also have your pleasure labeled as shameful.
Right.
It's a lot to take on at 5 and 6. And so it took me, into my 40s to really evolve out of the 5 and 6-year-old's mind when it came to my self-worth and my wounds of rejection and abandonment, and certainly my sexual my outlook on my sexuality and my eroticism. And so in the process of finally cracking all that open and spending more time with myself, loving and healing myself, I came to experience life with a new sense of like activated aliveness. And when I reignited my sexual energy, that too like added another layer of the aliveness is the word. It's hard to come up with another word, but like this activated, turned on life. Like that's part of my new program is called Life Turned On. And it means for it to be reactivated with sensuality, with ceremony, with sacred purpose. And so my why is that I think everybody deserves to experience the kind of outlook I have on life now, compared to like what I had then. And I want everyone to feel that. I want everyone to evolve out of their traumas. I want them all to see their pasts as the gift. And this is where people can get triggered. But the idea that those things that happened to you are more of a gift than they were not. And I finally have evolved into that place where I understand that thinking, and I understand how, but for the challenges of my childhood, I would never have reached so far.
Right.
For all of these beautiful things that I call into my life now, and that process includes, the trusting in the self that today's topic is about, or that this season's topic is about.
Yeah, it's interesting when let me just think about this for a second, how I want to phrase it. There's such a piece about this being the whole be the wolf concept, about being who you truly are. And to do that, you sometimes have to pull back all those layers of the trauma and the stuff so that you could actually connect to what activates you and what turns you on. And that is a piece, like the wolf isn't trying to be a meek little mouse. The wolf is loving and also ferocious, has all these different sides, but the wolf is just the wolf. The beaver is just the beaver. The mouse is just the mouse. And so often, because of our experiences in the past, we will try to be something other than what we are. And so the process of doing that shuts down, I believe it shuts down that light, that turned on feeling. So I think a lot of people can really relate to this idea of whatever it was they've been through, whether it was major stuff or stuff that just felt major to them, but might not look major on paper. That place of feeling like, ugh, it's just like everything is flat. It's not where I want it to be. I know there's something more. Like that feeling that you know there's something more, like you see other people have it. And it's not the Instagram people that are doing like the perfect like looks and the perfect everything, but you can see it in some people because they just light up. So you know it exists, but it's something you've never felt. And so how do you get from that place of the shit basically to that life turned on, or that place that just fuels your own aliveness? How do we get there? What do we do? And when everything comes crumbling down, I mean, that's the piece. You can't go from the shit to the freedom basically without a whole bunch of stuff falling apart.
Right. So there's a formula. There's a natural set of laws of the universe that end up happening. So as soon as when you call in something more, every time you desire something, it sends out a frequency. And that frequency of your desire, it's instantly created somewhere. And whether you receive it or not, or when you receive it, has everything to do with what you do next. So as you desire something, that frequency is sent out. And as a result, it now brings up all of this stuff. Like I'm imagining like the bottom of an aquarium. This stirs up the bottom of the aquarium because and you have to clear all that stuff that's in the way of you receiving that thing that you desire. And so part of that process to get there is to first just observe the stuff that's coming up that's in the way. By separating yourself from it and, like, let's say, becoming the observer of it, that's where your place of power, that's where you have the empowerment around it. So that thing that's coming up is no longer controlling your mind. Like, you can have the thought of, I'm never enough, I always fail. You can have those thoughts, but you if you can separate yourself and recognize them as a thought that is separate from you, that's the place where you have power. And that's where you can begin to address the wounding that's coming up. But you can't do it if you are the wounding. If the wounding is simply all you can think of and you are in the quicksand of
Right.
that looping thought, you can get nowhere on it. So the first step is to literally, like, to pull your aperture back one level and become the observer of the person having the thought, and realize that that thought isn't probably just yours, because our bodies store memories from our ancestral lineage and from our past lives, and they can often be and are entangled in this lifetime, because again, we're meant to be the change makers. So we have a choice in how to do that. So part of the journey that I take these radical femmes through now is in how to envision a version of you that you've never been before. How do you do that? And it helps to have icons, or alter egos, that like I love Marilyn Monroe, as an icon. And a spiritual leader that I follow recently told me this story. I guess there's an excerpt in a Marilyn Monroe biography from her personal photographer's wife, who was friends with her. And they were walking down the street, and it's told in a way that you don't know who the wife is walking with. But she's like, I'm walking down the streets of New York one day with this blonde, her hair's pulled up in a ponytail, and she's pretty plain or whatever. But then suddenly the woman turns to her and says something like, do you want to see me turn it on? And then Marilyn Monroe turns it on. She simply just shifts her energy in some sort of way. And all of a sudden, people are stopping on the street to look at her. Cars are honking. And it was literally like a frequency shift that she suddenly sent out. And, for me, that's like the epitome of, like, she just turned it on. She turned on life right there. All the attention, the sexual energy that she emits, So my point being, the alter ego or the icon can be helpful, because we can bring on the persona of that icon and then say, well, what decision would she make in this moment? What would she say to that wounded piece of the voice that's coming up? And that can be a helpful bridge, so you're calling in a higher vibration and then holding it long enough that you eventually embody the vibration and the universe shifts accordingly.
So it's like, if you work out every day, like putting this in like tangible things of what people might understand if they can't quite understand the vibrational thing, because
Sure.
it's not always the easiest thing to understand. You work out every day, you hate it. It's like, oh my God, but you get up every day and you do it for like 6 months. And then all of a sudden, if you don't do it, it feels unnatural that you're not doing it. So you've created this habit where now it's your normal. It feels totally normal to get up and do that.
I would frame it a little differently. I would actually
Yeah.
say where you get up and you've exercised before you even realize it. You're already done with the exercise when you go back
Yes.
to it. Oh, I just did the thing. Like it's so second nature to you now that you have to actually notice that it was even special anymore.
Yeah, that's
That.
good, because it feels real. And I use this language with my clients. We talk about when they're in a spiral of emotion, like, oh, everything is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, what do you have right now? And we start really simple. The things you take for granted. I have air to breathe right now. The things, and so, I have a heart that pumps my blood. And so what I'm hearing you say is that there's a point when it just is so real and natural to you that you almost take it for granted.
Yes, that's when you know you've made the shift. I am that. I am already that. And you think you said something about feeling like that new thing, as opposed to you just deciding you are that new thing. And that's kind of it. I'm still finding the language myself for this, because I'm in the middle of this particular transition myself. But declaring that you simply are that thing and changing your internal language can be really important too. Like literally not talking as if you're still waiting for something to happen in order to embody that new persona, but that you are in fact that new persona. And what decision would she make? And what would she say to this person in front of her? What would she say to that opportunity that landed for her? What would she say to you also have to be practical as well, right? You can't go spending money like you have it. You don't. So there has to be some management of that.
Coming back to, you have to work with what you have right now.
I'll give you a practical tool.
Yeah.
If you can go back to a time in your life where you have felt that thing that you're hoping to feel again. So whether it's freedom or a sense of eagerness and enthusiasm about life, or feeling like super loved, like there was not a moment of doubt in this one moment in time where I felt love. Maybe it was a wedding day, or you're sitting on your dad's lap, when you were 8 or something. And if you can really bring in the actual embodied memory of that, and the embodied memory means what were the physical sensations that you felt, and maybe the thoughts that you had all at the same time. All of it all together is the embodied feeling. So you might feel a warmth in your heart space. You might feel a vibratory quality to your whole body, almost a sense of wanting to move forward, like a momentum, and that you had thoughts of like, this is a perfect moment. And if you can remember what that felt like, and you can literally bring that snapshot, that mind-body snapshot back in that moment, that's the place to then ask yourself, like, what do I want to do next? From that vibration, what do I want to do next? What move am I making now?
I used to use that method. Well, I've transcended this place, but I used to have this memory when I was 3 years old. And I used to refer to it as before anything terrible ever happened to me. And it was, I was drawing on my front porch, and I felt the most free that I could remember ever in my life. Like I could create the world on this piece of paper, and I felt like possibilities were endless. And now it's interesting. I've transcended that. Like now that feels very small. But at the time, that was the hugest vibrational feeling that I could experience and that I could ever remember tangibly experiencing. So I would step into it all the time, and I would use that as my guide. Does this bring me closer? Whatever the thing at hand, does this bring me closer to that feeling or further away from it? So I would sort of use it as my compass until I hit that point.
Yeah, I can see that. That's an example of the turned on. Like in that moment, to the 3-year-old, life felt turned on. Yeah. Anything is possible. And then it sounds like that was a ceiling that you were using, and then you hit the ceiling enough that the ceiling became old news.
Right.
And so
Right.
then you had to raise your ceiling again. And that's a
Yeah.
super exciting. And I certainly have that experience, right? So like as a child of sexual abuse and incest, like, you know, even pleasure, my worthiness all had a certain cap, that I
Right.
could feel based on those experiences and the trauma response of her, necessary at that time. But once I held space enough for her that she felt resolved and loved and seen, then my pleasure threshold of all of life, every aspect of life, not just
Yeah.
physical pleasure, but like every aspect of life, I got an opportunity to raise the ceiling. And over again, that journey continues. And we say up, and I mean out too, like up and
Yeah.
out.
It's expansion in all the ways.
Yeah.
And one of the things that as we do that and you hit that place, so then you start hitting the unknown. So I'm in this place personally where every step I take is completely unknown because I've
Yes.
never been there. I have no physical memory, no like concept of what it feels like, because compared to like any of my other highs in life, where I sit on a daily basis, even in my sort of blah days, is so much more expansive, so much bigger. And so every day I'm facing the unknown. And so as we're moving into that idea of transition, and I know you're going through a lot of it, we talked earlier about putting in practice what you believe. And then also that idea of, well, every step of the way is the unknown. And how do you get comfortable with
Yeah.
just trusting that somehow you're going to be supported? What you need is going to show up. And so, as you're moving through this process, I'd love to have you share about your story of this, of all these crazy transitions that are happening and how you're navigating them, because I know that the people listening are navigating their own challenges, that and they're stepping into the unknown, and that fear of the unknown I've noticed with my clients, my business owners especially when they're getting close to that threshold of the success and the type of business and fulfillment satisfaction they want, they will self-sabotage right at that point, because that fear of the unknown and not trusting that they will be supported and what they need will show up is more scary than
Yeah.
staying in the muck than they're in.
Yeah. And I'd say that there are two things that come to mind as you asked me that question. And I wrote a blog article about this on my website, about changing your relationship to change because of that factor of the unknown causing fear. And so over time, besides cracking open my sexual awakening and dealing with the trauma of my childhood, I also what happened along the way was I built these tools that created a sense of self-trust. And I don't have to necessarily trust that something will come to me. I just have to trust that I am capable of responding to anything that happens in front of me. And I have built that over time. And that includes building an emotional support network of, not just women, but whomever is at my disposal for that. And my spiritual cosmology helps me to know, because I've seen the magic happen over and over again,
Right.
that when I trust and I simply hold, like, let's say, the frequency of self-love, that that the universe does step up for me, and that when things happen that I don't understand, that doesn't mean that it isn't for my highest good, or that like I recently was trying to apply for this co-living community out here in San Diego. And I was, I like knew half the residents. They have lifestyles that are similar to mine. We live in the same communities, the alternative lifestyles. And I even got through like the meal with all the residents. I thought it went beautifully well. And then I wasn't invited to join them. And I was so surprised because the alignment was so good. Like I just thought, how could this possibly happen? But what it did do was redirect me to what I did want out of that living situation, but without, like, let's say there were just a couple of residents who, ultimately felt I was I was too counterculture, which just makes me laugh because they're already super counterculture by being in a co-living sex positive clothing optional community. And then but I'm too nonconformist for them. So I felt like I had kind of achieved something by turned down. But what it did was it directed me. I didn't know about the things that I wanted that were part of that community, that now I'm very clear on, oh, maybe I don't want to be at the beach, where I love the beach, but it's like, it's not quiet. I can't really get my feet in a quiet place and have, contemplative time with myself. And so it's redirected me to some friends who have offered to rent to me, who have like an acre and a half, and I could get my feet in the dirt and I don't have to explain my lifestyle because they already know who I am. And then I get taken care of by people who really love me without the judgment, say, of the couple of people that didn't, that weren't interested in me joining. So again, like, I think that part of the process that's super important is to actively and consciously look for the ways that the universe is actually supporting you, because it will feel like it's not. Right. But again, because you desired something more, it has to stir up the bottom of the aquarium. It has to bring up all of the things, the beliefs, the thoughts, the people, the energies that are all in your way of actually aligning and getting that thing that you want. And so you have to just hold on with, I know this is happening for me and not to me. Right. And then try not to get caught so much in the fear that you're not able to see the things in front of you that are happening for you, and like maybe the redirect that's happening, and then just keep trusting in intuition and the development of intuition. I don't know how much you might want to go into that, but certainly developing more of how you notice and how to listen to the universe as it's guiding you, can be a really incredible tool.
Well, and I think one of the things, I always believe that the universe is working for me, always. I might not see it right now, but I can see so clearly, if we're going to talk about vibration, that the space that you got denied from was not the right vibration.
Right.
And even though it was in a package of what you want, and I think we so often get distracted by the package and we're not clear on what it is about that we think we want. So I always think about the beach house that I want. And it's not about this big house. It's about me being able to walk out my door and put my feet in the sand and in the ocean. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. That's what it is. But I also know that that's an anchor for me from my childhood living in a small beach town, that sitting on the beach saved my life, like literally saved my life. It was where I went when everything was. So in a way, it's a safety net. It's a safety net of being able to trust that I can clear whatever gunk is in my way. But the reality is I know how to clear the gunk that's in my way. So it's not the beach house that is actually the need. The need is actually within me being able to clear the gunk.
It's the emotion.
Yeah.
The emotion you're reaching for by getting that thing.
Yeah.
So that beach house represents safety and freedom and self-nourishment, maybe. And so like when you start to realize that that's what you're looking for, not necessarily the beach house, but you're looking for those emotions. Same with me in the co-living community. I wanted a sense of expanded space, a sense of solitude when I needed it, a sense of people really understanding and celebrating me for who I am, and access to a great kitchen, like there's some other things, because I want the kitchens, again, for my own freedom and creativity. And so when I start to focus on, oh, it's creativity and liberation and celebration and access to nature that I want, that's a very, and I want those things because then I feel more whole, then it's a more of a fast track to that thing coming to you when you start to realize what the emotions are that you're looking for. Because now you have a marker for saying, okay, where do I already feel liberation, celebration, and solitude in my life? Where do I already have that in my life? And then you start to go, wait, gosh, I already have that in this way and that way and this way. And the more that you realize you have what you're already looking for, the more the universe sends it to you, because that's the law of attraction. So
Right.
people will often like complain that it's really like, oh, it's just a mindset shift. You're just deluding yourself that you have those things. But that's not true. What you're doing is actually, you're being brave enough to admit, in fact, that you're not a victim of your
Oh,
past. In
yes.
fact, you do have those things that you're looking for. They just weren't in the form, like your beach house,
Right.
that you envisioned them as. I had this conversation with a partner recently about devotion and whether I will or wouldn't live with another partner again in the future. And I said, well, if I did, we would have separate bedrooms and stuff like that, because that's important to me to have that healthy separateness. But what I was really looking for, I realized, was this sense of devotion, for someone to prioritize me, not like primary partners or any of the language that like polyamory would use, but to just feel important to that person, and that
Mhm.
maybe that we have holidays together, or so at least we talk about whether we'd have holidays together. But again, like when I realized what I was looking for in the possibility of living with someone or not, I realized, oh, I already have this devotion that I thought it looked like this, like living together with separate bedrooms and the whole thing. And this partner challenged me on like, well, I would say that I'm devoted to you. And he listed the ways that he, where he puts me in his life and all those things. And I was like, gosh, you know what? It cracked my mind back open. And I realized, gosh, in what relationship that I have right now am I not receiving devotion? And that was the unlock. Like, here I thought there was this thing I didn't have and I wasn't achieving. But when he challenged me on it and explained what his version of that was, I went back and did like the audit of all my other relationships and realized there's not one relationship where I'm not seeing that beautiful devotion that I thought I was.
What stands out to me is that you realized we have this habit as humans to focus on what we lack. That's why we want the other things.
Yes.
We want them because we feel like we lack them. And so that key of realizing that you already have what it is you're looking for, when you can pinpoint what it is, it's not the thing, it's what the thing gives you and makes you feel.
Yes.
That you realize essentially you're whole. You're whole already. And when you focus on the things that you have in that form, when you realize what they are, that sense of peace, serenity, whatever it might be, oh, I have those things. And you get what you focus on.
Yes.
So
So
if
you go from I have that to, oh my gosh, I am that. I already am that.
yeah,
That thing that I think I'm not already.
so you have it. And so like I realize I have the park that's a few, blocks from my house. I can walk a half an hour and sit on the riverbank. I have those things already at my disposal. I also can close my eyes and go to the beach and be right in that state. So knowing that I have everything I need allows me to create literally, because I'm in a positive emotional state. When you're in a contractive emotional state, you subconsciously make decisions that are about instant gratification and not about anything to do with expansion, creation, building. And this is so important for entrepreneurs to get your emotional state under control, because if you're in that feeling of lack, whatever it is, any emotion that feels contracting is a feeling of lack. You are automatically narrowing your focus and you're not able to see those opportunities that the universe or God, if you will, or the whatever might be out there for you. You're narrowing your focus, and you can only really access those higher things that are better, that are not going to get you the same thing if you're in a positive emotional state.
Part of the journey that I've just come through, or I'm in the middle of right now, is I realized that I was still blocking myself from receiving.
Yes.
Even from myself. Like, I'm good at self-care. I can go get my pedicure or to have a spa treatment or have a friend give me a massage. I can do all those things. But I was actually but often through the health crisis, I recently took myself to this Ayurvedic center up in Northern California and spent like 8 nights there with like handheld daily care to get my body reset and all of my organs reset. And I went through such guilt and shame over the money that it took to do that. And so even in at the most basic level, energetically, I'm kind of blocking the receiving even from myself. And
Mm.
so one of the unlocks since March, when all of this stuff got turned upside down, was in the excruciating transition of taking the risk of receiving from someone. Like I was really sick, and it was a bad enough day that I couldn't even go downstairs and make myself some broth or something. And I had a partner who reached out and said, let me send you some juice, like to your door, fresh squeezed juice to your door. And I remember he was having some initial trouble getting in touch with a vendor that was going to be able to deliver it at that time of day or whatever. And I could feel the child in me cringing, because she knows that if she becomes too much of a burden to one of her parents, they abandon her in some way. They leave her, they send her away, or my father leaves and doesn't come back for months if I'm too much. And so this is what came up for me while I was sick. And this partner was, and especially when they were initially having trouble finding the vendor, because then I started to back out, and I'm like, oh, it's okay, no problem, that's right, I'm not going to be any problem, I don't want you to abandon me. I mean, that was like the subtext language underneath it all.
Right.
And I remember him being like, wait a minute, just give me another minute to find, I think we can handle this, like, just hang on. I'm like, okay, like we're texting over WhatsApp or something. And sure enough, it didn't take him long to find yet another juice vendor that could have this juice delivered to my door. But I remember the excruciating feeling of a sense of emotions. They were confusing because, it certainly was a kind gesture. I certainly needed the juice.
Right.
And I remember saying out loud to him over WhatsApp, like, wow, this is so hard. It is so hard to accept this from you. And I think that probably helped too, just to sort of name what was happening with me. But that was a turning point. Like, that was in March, and that was a little turning point of then all of a sudden I had 5 of my partners come and help me move out of that house. One of those partners let me move in with him for 3 months with no rent, and took such beautiful care of me. I'm house sitting this month because another set of those friends who helped me move were like, come house sit for us in July. And that's given me time to get my health back in order, to figure out where I'm going to live next without the pressure of having to make decisions out of fear. And those are the kinds of gestures that that another part of me, if I was in fear and survival mode all the time, wouldn't notice that
Right.
those gestures were being given to me. I would overlook them as something else. And I've been really humbled in the most beautiful way, in the most beautiful, activated, again, like turned on kind of way, that I have support around me, including me. And sometimes I have to ask for the support, but I also have this support available to me. And again, we can often just overlook or make smaller these
Right.
gestures around us, because they're not maybe the big gestures, that we're looking for.
And how much it takes. And I think this for all business owners, your business will never do as well as you want it to do if you cannot receive. And
Hmm.
so I know a lot of entrepreneurs who are working themselves to death. They have a really hard time letting go of control. They have a hard time asking for help, all of those things. So that's a big thing for a lot of people when it comes to business. But the practicality of it stems from these places when we were young, when we didn't get the support that we needed. And because we have that fear of that happening again, it puts you in that contractive state where you're not able to see the support that's available, the abundance that might be coming in, the gestures.
Or you say no.
Yeah.
Someone puts their hand out, and you know, like me, you have that moment from the past where it's like, it's not safe to do that,
Yeah.
or I don't know, that I'm afraid, like, it's almost like I'm afraid of the kindness, because
Hmm.
eventually the kindness will be taken away. And again, I'm trying to avoid whatever that 5-year-old feeling is.
Right.
So that's the stuff you're battling, you know, like you have to be really kind to yourself through these processes, and really loving to that child version of you. Even realizing first that it's a child version of you is really key. And
Yeah.
then to be so kind in the way that that you speak to that piece of you, and not be scolding, and not and listen to their needs, and address their needs from the inside out. Create like a little bubble inside where you actually have a playground or whatever, or a place of safety that you speak with that version of yourself, and you show them, that inner child, the examples of the ways that the world is safe and that they are loved, and that, you know.
Right. And that's such a big piece of it, is looking for the examples, even if on an everyday basis you're not noticing them, taking the time out to sit and really look for the examples,
Yes.
because you have to, your mind is programmed to prove to you what you already believe. And so that's what it's focusing on, whether you're conscious of it or not. So you've got to keep taking the time to look outside the box and see what else is out there for you. And you can only do that when you're feeling a positive emotion. So if that means stepping back into a past memory so that you could allow yourself to fill up with that emotion of feeling like really good and supported and safe. And then as you feel that, look at the world around you, see what you have right now.
Yeah. No, you made a great point, because you don't have to, you can get that good vibe from anything. You could literally, you could be churning about something that you're struggling with, and then go take a swim, or go watch, you know, a singing audition that like lifts your spirits.
Yeah.
However you lift your spirits is actually irrelevant to the addressing of that thing that you were struggling with.
Yeah.
Anything you can do to raise the vibration and lift your spirit, so to speak, then go back to the problem, you will see the problem differently. And usually some other new kind of way forward will make itself known to you.
So as you're moving through the transition of being in sort of not a permanent place to stay, you're transitioning your business, all of these transitions, tell us a couple of the magical things that are coming to you by just, it's almost like going with the flow in a way.
Yeah. Well, even the introduction to this co-living community, I did not know existed. So just the introduction to it, because that was then the seed that was planted that will ultimately lead to my finding a place that will be far more aligned to me now. So even just that, you know, the gift of the 3 months at that one partner's house, for rent free, and their love and support while I was there, and we loved to cook together. So I got to, you know, I got to feel grounded in my creativity, and then have the support and like the arms around me whenever I needed it, you know. And then this house sitting gig that came up in July, which I had not at all had on my radar. And then this offer, you know, this offer of the rental by these friends who have this large property. I mean, over and over again, over the more that I sit and I'm trying to come up with the right words. The more that I turn inward and notice on purpose the ways that my life is fraught with little blessings, the more little blessings are sent to me. And it's not bypassing. It's being really honest.
Yeah.
And again, getting out of the child's mind and pulling the aperture back to say, you know, like devotion. Oh my gosh. Devotion here, devotion there, devotion here. It does not have, and that's when I realized, even at the state of evolution that I am at, like there was another wounded mind saying devotion needs to look like this. I want it to look like living together and being prioritized and having holidays together. I want them to think of me first. And then I heard myself, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's really a child's mind wanting that.
And
And then that gave me the opportunity to be kind to her and address her.
And so as you are pulling back and looking back at the aperture of what you're creating in your business, what does that look like?
Yeah. It's a completely different transition because I'm elevating completely away from the language of healing, or that we need like that we're broken or sick or that we need to be healed.
Right.
We are whole. We are whole and perfect already. And our cellular memory, our DNA does hold on to, our body, and our body mind stores memories in certain ways. And again, not just our memories, but our lineage and our past lives. And so now my focus is less on what are the obstacles in our way. They will come up and there'll be techniques for handling that, but it's really about directing yourself toward where you're going instead. What is the I want to say vibration, because it kind of feels like that, going back to that like Marilyn Monroe moment. Like, what is the frequency that you want to step into? And you can find little ways. So for me, what I'm doing is leading these radical femmes to really master their reality by fully stepping into that new next level identity that they're looking for. And so I help to hold the container around that, and I pull them in, and then we hold it together until they can hold it for themselves. So it's a more optimistic and affirmative direction, rather than focusing on these traumas that you can get into this cycle of like, well, there's always something to heal, and so I'm always in this cycle of feeling like I'm not quite there, I'm not quite complete. Right. So there's a new, it's more than a nuance, but it's an important evolution to the work that I'm doing now. And I know that my energy is catalytic. So it's really perfect to start describing myself as an accelerator these days. I'm super excited about the new clarity that I have around how I can serve.
I love that. How are people going to get in touch with you to turn their life on?
Yeah. Right now, probably the best way is just my website, which, has some of my older version of me in there, but it's also getting updated as we speak. So www.sharonmariescott.com. And you can certainly find me on Facebook, and feel free to private message me there. But you can get on my newsletter. And I'm about to start developing this 21-day accelerator, it's called Say Fuck Yes. And it's all about how to step into that next level self-identity. And so it's 21 days of live activations from me, where I am creating that vibration and that container for you to step into, and then stay with me for those 21 days. And there's education and transition so that you can get that kickstart you're looking for into that new identity that you're looking to move toward.
So that means everybody, if you open up your browser right now, type in SharonMarieScott.com.
Yep. Or email me, Sharon@SharonMarieScott. You can email me directly, because I am going to be creating a waiting list for that.
Okay. And get on your newsletter then. Yeah, if they don't email you, get on the newsletter so that you can have access to the 21-day accelerator.
Yeah. I can't wait.
Beautiful. Okay. So now, if you think back to the beginning of this all the transitions started to crumble, and you know that you had been putting out into the world what you want, you had been thinking about it on some level. What did you need to know at the beginning of these transitions to maybe save you some of the struggle? Because I know it's we trust it and we get better at it, but when it first starts happening, it's not always so easy.
Yeah.
So what did you need to know that would have made that beginning part of all these transitions easier?
Don't bother to scold myself for everything that led up to the moment of transition. Do not scold the version of you that made those choices. In fact, literally, like, shift immediately. What's today? And not dwell in the cycle of I'm a victim of a person, I'm a victim of life, I'm a victim of my mind. Just throw all that away and like literally start fresh. What choice am I going to make today? What choice am I going to make in the next hour? What choice am I going to make in this moment, without any of the past bothering to influence the choice you're making in this moment?
What would you have needed to know to be able to do that?
I think I would have, I again, like it's about that separation again, like recognizing that thought, like the scolding thought, as someone else's voice, and
Mhm.
that I have a choice to scold the choices that I made. I made those choices. I made the best choice I could in those moments. And so just the kindness, the empathy and the kindness to the self,
Right.
I think that's really it. And I mean, it's an answer for so much, really. The
Yeah.
kindness to self.
And it's a good thing to always be reminded of. I know we hear it, especially if you're in the personal development world, you hear that a lot, but I think we cannot be reminded of that enough.
Yeah. And you are already that version of you that you want to be. It's already there.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's true. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom through your transitions and some of your insights in how to trust through transition.
Mm, it's such a good
I'm
topic.
I'm so excited to see all the new stuff that you have coming out, and I've been following your journey for a while. So
I know. It's so good to connect, and because of our last interview, like what a different place from that interview to this one. I look forward to even eventually watching that myself and reminding myself of where I was and where I am. And that's another great tool as we leave, like to give
yeah,
yourself credit for everything you've done and where you are.
yeah. I mean, so often we think that we're just not where we want to be, but man, if you look at where you were even a year ago, it's dramatic,
Yeah.
dramatic. I can't even. Whew. I've been turned inside out like 10 times this last year. So in a great
Mhm.
way, in a wonderful way. So yeah. Well, thank you again. And everybody out there, I want you to remember when you unleash the power of you, that humanity evolves. And we will see you next time on Be the Wolf.